Hello, everybody, and welcome to another edition of Grace to All with Paul Gray. So glad that you're with us today, and I get to visit with somebody that I've known on Facebook for a while, but have never seen or talked to in person until now. His name is Mark Venable, and Mark's he was born in Texas, New Mexico raised. He lives in Tennessee now. He's got 4 boys, 21 and older, and a grandson. And he travels around the country with his business. He's a credit card representative, and he just has wonderful things to post and comment on Facebook, which is how I connected with him, and I always appreciate those. And we've been trying to get together for a while, and we're both busy men, but here we are. So, Mark, welcome to Grace to All with Paul Gray.
Thank you. I've got three of your books, and I learned from a lot of folks, you included. I'm new to the grace walk, really just needed to find a better understanding of who God was, probably 5 or 6 years ago. And my first introduction was with Joseph Prince, honestly. I saw him on TV a lot, and I bought several of his books. I downloaded like 28 of his sermons, and I was just immersing myself with the knowledge of grace that I have or had then or wanted to learn. So that's how I just knew there had to be a better way. So
yeah, well, there is a better way.
I've learned a little bit and got a whole lot to learn. So
well, we all do, Mark. I used to listen and read a lot to Mark Venable, or not, that's you, Joseph Prince, and I've got his books, and we're all on a journey, and for me and for you too, I guess at a certain time and place, he was the right person to listen to, and God puts others in our life. So in the 5 or 6 years that you've been on this grace journey, tell me, how's that affected your relationships with your boys and your customers, people at work, just everybody in your life?
Well, in the religious world, there's divisions. If people haven't asked Jesus in their heart, then they're a non-believer. And I really do believe now that we've never been separated from God. He made us in His own image.
Yeah.
And this idea that, I came out with I'm kind of an analogy person. We've heard the story of Adam and Eve, and you can eat everything of the garden but this one, and I'm thinking about a little 5-year-old boy or something. His mom and dad, near Christmas, they have this wonderful, beautifully wrapped package. They bring it in, and of course, Johnny, he's just so excited. He's jumping up and down. They say, "Now, Johnny, this is for you, but you cannot open this until Christmas Day. There'll be severe consequences, if you do." And he just can't help himself. He's looks at it, listens to it, shakes it. He just can't help himself. He's just so excited. He can't sleep, and gets a little closer to Christmas. He just can't handle it anymore. He goes and opens the gift. Now, would a good father say, "Johnny, you're so much loved. Tell you what, let's put this thing back in the package, and we'll open it on Christmas morning." But this God that we were told to believe in would say, "Okay, you did it. I told you. There'll be you're out of here. You're gone." Nobody would believe that. Nobody would believe that. Yet we're taught to believe in the church that this loving God would set up this beautiful fruit, and you can't touch it, you can't eat it. And then if He's all knowing and knows the future, He knew they were going to do it. I just got to where I couldn't believe that anymore. I just couldn't believe it anymore. So there was a time when life was really hard for me that I just decided there can't be a God. And so that didn't last long. I think it's Romans chapter 1 that talks about, we're convinced, we can be convinced because of what we see God create. So it's been a journey. I heard Don Keithley say, go ahead and just deconstruct, do it. Well, I can't just do that. It's been a longer process for me, and I still struggle with, wrong emotions. And it just, for me, when I was over 50 years old when, I started searching for a better way. So But it helps me to love people because I know that I'm unconditionally loved. At least I try to know it. I know it, but I don't always feel it. My emotions don't always line up with what I feel, if that makes sense. So if I see everybody as a brother and everybody is deeply loved, then we're sort of on the same team.
Yeah.
And it's kind of easier to love your teammates than an enemy or a perceived enemy. So still learning, still growing. Just a matter of fact, I had to read my Bible. It's just one of the things that I had to do to please and appease an angry God. And I haven't read the Bible really much in about 7 or 8 years. I listened to you give your interpretations, and Steve McVeigh and Don Keithley and Mike Popovich and many others. And I received that. But I just Steve McVeigh told me one time, Mark, there'll be a time you'll be able to read the Bible and you'll be able to read it for the right with the right intention, right heart, frame of heart. And I suppose I will. I don't know. It was just so hard, for over 50 years. I had to do it.
Yeah.
And now, maybe one day it'll be part of my daily routine. But for me, it's just a long process of just all I want to know is that I'm loved. I spend a lot of time in meditation and being quiet and still. So anyway, sorry for that rambling answer there.
No, and of course you are loved. We know that, but as you mentioned, sometimes we can forget, or we can fall back into that old mindset of thinking, oh man, I just lost my temper or had this thought or whatever, does God really love me? I mean, because we felt that way for so long, for so many years. You're a quick learner. I'd been a pastor for 20 years and I was 62, 63 years old before I started getting this 10, 11 years ago. So, but we're all right on time. So you had a religious background, right?
Oh yeah.
And at some point in time, that no longer worked for you. Is that right?
Well, I see no reason to name the denomination, but it was always hell, brimstone, all that kind of stuff. And so the preacher would guilt you. You go down to this altar and kneel at the altar, and you'd pray, basically beg God to save you, And so, but they had this horrible terminology that said if you didn't pray through, then you weren't saved.
Pray through?
And so what did that teach you about the character and nature of God? He didn't really want to save you. I don't know. I used to be a chapter and verse guy. I'm not anymore, but I know there's a verse that said something like, for the joy set before him, Jesus endured the suffering of the cross. So you'd think he'd be hooting and hollering and jumping up and down and say, welcome to the kingdom, my beloved child, and all that sort of thing. But no, if you didn't pray through, and you could pray through all night, you could pray all night. But if you weren't contrite enough, if you didn't hold your mouth right, I don't know, then God rejected at the altar. So I had that was the vision I had of God from basically my whole life. And I read the Bible, and I had a quiet time, and, the tithe was a big deal too, because I always paid it, but I, felt like I just couldn't afford 10%. Well, that produces guilt as well. So I learned now God doesn't really need your money, and the tithe was really for one tribe out of the 12 tribes of Israel, after they crossed the Jordan, but yeah, it was. And I've heard Steve McVeigh talk about it. There's times when you have hardship in your life, and that hardship leads you to look for a better way, a different way. So it was just some hard times that led me to just think there's got to be something different. There's got to be something better. So,
so how did it actually happen for you, Mark? You were searching. You were hoping for something better. Did somebody send you a book? Did you find somebody online? Did God speak to you?
Well, like I said, I think it started out. I think it was seeing Joseph Prince on TV that talked about Old Covenant, New Covenant, and would bring the verses in Hebrews. It talks about there'd be no reason for a new covenant if the old one was still good, and it's now obsolete. And I'm not sure about that now. Scripture tells us God never changes. And I think Brad Jerzak talks about, I think it's Psalm 139:4, 139:7 that says, "Happy you will be if you throw the infant skulls against the rocks." And every word of Scripture is supposed to be inspired. And I thought, well, how can you make a doctrine out of that verse? So, and it can't be both ways. Jesus is the exact representation of God the Father.
Yeah.
He would have picked up a stone at the lady caught in a very active adultery, and he would have joined right in.
Yeah.
But he didn't do it.
No.
So that tells me that God the Father is not that way.
It's not that way. I agree that he doesn't ever change. The way he's portrayed in the Old Testament is just incorrect. That's the nicest way you can say it, really.
I don't know if you know Dave Carringer. He's in the Chattanooga, Tennessee area. He's written a book, and I follow him on Facebook. And basically, these are Moses's words.
Yeah.
And I'm sure he was sincere. He wanted to write down what he thought God was telling him, but he just had to have it wrong on some measure. So I think God's way better than what we thought, what we were told, and so. My main activity now is just like spend a lot of time in meditation, just meditating on the love of God, and that I've never been separated. And things like in Him we live and move and have our being. We couldn't have been separated from God. We couldn't have, but just by sheer physics, we couldn't have been separated from God. If we were, then we wouldn't be here talking about it.
No, I'm not scientifically oriented. I've never had physics or anything like that, but I do love hearing about quantum physics and how the basics of it that I can understand from Steve McVeigh's teaching and other people. But it was just impossible that we could even exist without God,
exactly.
let alone that we could ever have come into being. And to say that we're separate and that He's there somewhere and we're it just doesn't pass the smell test anymore, does it?
No, it doesn't.
Yeah.
So I'm very much still on the journey. I still struggle with wounded, damaged emotions. And so Don Keith would probably get on me a little bit. Mark, come on, just go ahead and do the D stuff right now. Get it over with. But it's just it's a longer process for me. And so, but the feelings of guilt and shame just overwhelm me. And it. I'd be in a funk for months. Now it may be a day because I believe I know the truth, and I don't believe the emotions that come rising up and can overwhelm a person.
Yeah. Well, that's a big change from now only being in a funk for a day. That's kind of my case. I can still have those thoughts and get down, but I'm certainly learning to just stop and say, "Oh, okay, Papa, Jesus, he didn't care what you call him. Tell me what's going on here. What do you want me to know? What do you want me to hear?" And sometimes if it's somebody else that's, put me down or judged me or criticized me or whatever, I'll just say, "What do you want me to know about that other person?"
Yeah.
And, when I'm quiet, he will always tell me. Sometimes it's a general thing like, hey, they got their own stuff that they're dealing with. It's just like the people that crucified Jesus. They don't know what they're doing. That's more about them than you. You just listen to me and you'll be okay. Sometimes he'll tell me something very specific. Sometimes he'll say, well, what this has happened in their past and what you said to them really triggered that. And I'll go, oh yeah, I do know that about them. And then I can go back and make amends. And as far it depends on me, I can live at peace. We can't control the other person's actions, but we can do our part, and we can sure listen to God and let Him speak to us, and that's what
My
makes a
son
huge
Matthew,
difference.
he's 33 now. He said he has cerebral palsy, lives in an assisted living home. And I go pick him up every Sunday afternoon, and I bring him home, and our routine is to watch a movie or two. That was kind of our family activity back in the day when all the family was home, was to watch a movie, because Matthew was very limited physically, But he struggled with things because we taught him we taught him, basic legalistic Christian evangelism or whatever, or evangelicalism, and so I've told him I don't believe that a good God could ever create eternal conscious torment. I don't think it's ever even entered his mind.
Mm.
And I talked about his own birth. I said, Matthew, what do you have to do to be my son? Well, exist. And I said, yeah, you had nothing to do with it. Your mom and I decided we want to have a child, and you were created. You didn't even have a choice in the matter. You became our son because we wanted a child. Certainly, it's the same way in the spiritual realm. Certainly, it is. If we exist, then we're a child of God. This long, complicated, futile, mind-blowing, guilt-riddled thing that we have to do. We got to pray, we got to do this, we got to go to church, blah, 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 blah. People use the term, you're doomed for eternal conscious torment until you say the magic words, Matthew didn't have to say any magic words. It was already done. It was completed before he even had knowledge of it. So
Saul didn't say the magic words. God just showed up to him.
Yeah. So, I think that's a good revelation to me. I want Matt to I'm a son. Just bask in that. Just, get to know your dad. Just get to know your dad.
Yeah.
That's it. The idea, even things like worship. I guess it's okay to worship God, but the thought that my children will want to come around me and lean down on bended knees and worship me, that seems really weird. Let's just talk. Let's just have a chat.
Yeah.
I'm not a fisherman, but that would be, let's just go fishing. But they'll have to learn and teach me because I don't know nothing about it. But
yeah, he just wants to hang out with us, and
Yeah.
whatever we like to do, whether it's fishing or hunting or playing music or whatever, watching a movie together, whatever. That he's there with us, and he enjoys that. I mean, he delights in that, and that's a hard thing for us to grasp. But boy, once we know it, it puts a smile on our face, doesn't it?
Yeah. So I'm learning. My default when I'd wake up, most of my life is, okay, have I done everything? Okay, I've got to read the Bible for sure. I've got to have a quiet time for sure. I want my worship to be pure. And so I'm pleasing to God. Now it's just, thank you, Father. I'm your son. I've always been your son. I've never been separated. Give me more knowledge of that. It's a fact. So it really is just becoming more and more aware of who we are, really. There's nothing we have to do. Like I said, just in the spiritual sense, just the same with my son. He had nothing to do with becoming a son, nothing. And I've got nothing to do with being a son. I am a son. So it's becoming more and more aware that I am a son. I'm loved and I'm cherished, and I'm one with God. And my thoughts are His thoughts. His thoughts are my thoughts. We used to, just torment ourselves. Is what I'm doing the will of God? Well, He'll tell you. He'll tell you. Our thoughts are His thoughts. I listen to Mike Popovich every Saturday night. Great guy, understanding the, and it's progressive. He learns more and more about who we are as the sons of God and our identity. But if you're struggling about the will of God, well, just be quiet. His desires are going to be our desires. So I don't know. I'm not to the point, I don't think, where I can just rest in that. It's still that got to work, got to do. And I'm trying to, I don't even know how to relax, but I'm learning. I'm trying. just to take a few deep breaths and and just rest in my oneness with God. So.
Yeah, it says in Hebrews early on, some translations say, make every effort to enter that rest. And, you would think, well, make an effort to rest. They don't quite go together. But, boy, we have to intentionally focus on resting. It's not a necessarily a physical effort, but it certainly is a mental and a spiritual effort to intentionally uh, stop our actions and our works and our striving and just depend on Him. I want to. We're almost done, Mark, but we'll do another recording that people will get to hear a week later. And when we do that, I want to pick up on God's will. Something you said there really triggered that. So before we finish this episode, I'm sure that there are people can relate to you and your journey and what you're saying. How can they connect with you?
Well, we spoke earlier. My desire would be that anybody struggling with an angry God, demanding God, you feel like you're doing your very best in church, you're working in the nursery, you're one of the greeters, and you do your best to pay their tab, but you still feel empty. And, I'd love for somebody to, I'll just be honest with them. I haven't learned it all, but I just know that I'm never going back to legalistic religion. I'm not. It's like having walked out of the jail cell, the doors open, and deciding for some reason I'm going to go back and sit in that jail. I'm not going back, So I'm on Facebook, Mark Venable. There's lots of other Mark Venables, believe it or not, even with a weird last name. But I live in Murfreesboro, Tennessee. You ought to be able to put in the search for Mark Venable, on Facebook. I don't do Twitter and all the twiddle-dee, twiddle-dum. I don't do all that kind of stuff. So I don't. But that's the surefire way. And if we connect on Facebook and they want to call me and have a voice-to-voice conversation, I'd be glad to talk to people. And I'll be honest with them. You saw me the other day on a somebody was talking about hell, and I said, well, I just don't believe a good God would ever even imagine the ECT, and then I got into this kind of argument with this guy, and didn't mean to, but I just hate to see people thinking that God could possibly, and I tell Matthew, they're incompatible. If God is loving, then there is no ECT. There can't be. There cannot be.
No.
There cannot be. Those are two incompatible ideas. So
God is pure light, and in him there is no darkness, and eternal conscious torment's about as dark concept that you could ever imagine, and it's just not true. And we have the wonderful opportunity to tell people the good news that it's not true. So,
at the end of Romans 8, I posted on Facebook. I saw that you liked it or whatever.
Yeah.
Paul says, I'm convinced neither life nor death nor this or that nor anything else in creation can separate us from the love of God. Well, unless hell is eternal, it was created.
Yeah.
Paul said no created thing separate from the love of God. Well, trillions of years in this torture chamber would separate from God. But Paul says no created thing can separate from God. And I guess anybody, there's 40,000 denominations. I guess everybody can take the scripture and make it say what they wanted to say. But,
we've sure done that.
So I'm of the mind that another thing, God is not given a spirit of fear, but of love and power, sound mind. Well, does hell incite fear? Does it incite love? He has not given us the spirit of fear.
Not at all.
So I've just got Don Keith's book, Heaven and Hell, or whatever. I forget the title, but he's going to talk about every word that was translated into hell, and I look forward to reading that. But I don't believe it. Like I said, I want to believe in a good God, and I can't believe in hell at the same time. So my compassion is to share my compassion. My desire is to. It's different. We used to have to evangelize, right? Because we're going to save people from hell. Now the evangelism is about just telling the good word.
Yeah.
It's like on Home Alone. They thought the old man across the street was this bad guy, and they found out towards the end of the movie, he was a good guy, you know. So we've all thought God was this demanding, Zeus-like God, and he's not like that at all.
No.
We've gone across the street and went into his house, and he hit the bad guy with a shovel, you know. So he's a really good guy, and so I want to know more and more about it. So
me too. Well, Mark, thank you so much. I know some people will want to connect with you. We're going to finish up now, and then we'll have another recording that'll show a week later. So thanks for being with us on this. Yeah. And thank all of you who've been watching and listening today to Grace with Paul Gray. We'll see you next time.